Oh, hello. Welcome once again to another gripping installment of Denton's Tales. And in this equine video, I am going to be horsing around, not quite literally as it happens, because I'll be looking at some Norse Nags, or to put it more correctly, I suppose, animals of the equine persuasion in Old Norse mythology, with three horses in particular. One of them the result of a very strange, intimate crossover relationship, you might say. Oh, yes. Another, a gift from a god. And the third, a rather frightening creature that would seem quite at home in one of those old Hammer horror movies with the likes of Vincent Price or Bela Lugosi mounted on top of it. It's quite something, I can tell you. Two of them share something unusual in common, in that both of them have the wrong number of legs. Yes, one of them's got too many. 8 legs, in fact, that's a lot of legs, while the other has too few, only 3. And if you think that's weird, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Now, horses were an integral part of Old Norse religion, being very important animals, of course, in everyday life, used for transport, for communication, for every kind of assistance to the human population. Thus, they became important in religion as well. They became sacred animals in the context of a sacrifice, or a blot, as it was called, to the gods, and they were often buried with their owners to serve them after death. Many graves have been found of men and women buried with their horses, which were killed and then put into the grave so as to accompany their owners into the next life and do whatever was required wherever they ended up. And a horse sacrifice, now that would have been part of any significant religious festival, such as the Yule-blot during the midwinter festival. Horse liver. Oh, yes. Now, horse liver was especially prized. And if whoever was organizing the sacrificial feast, usually a jarl, I suppose, well, if he gave you a second slice, well, Ducky, you were really favored. And the third slice, the world was your oyster. Oh, yes. When one thinks of horses in Norse mythology, I suppose the first thing that would spring readily to mind to most people might be the horses of the Valkyria, the Valkyries, galloping across the sky as they carry dead warriors to feast with the gods in Osgard, or Asgard, as it is in English. But that's only partly correct. Yes, like so many things about the world of the Old Norse, correctness often has very little to do with anything. The Valkyries could also be mounted on huge boars, or even on oversized wolves. Yes, wolves. And you'd need a pretty hefty wolf to carry an armoured woman, plus her deceased armoured passenger, I can tell you. Even the dire wolves out of Game of Thrones would have had a bit of a job with that one. But see, horses are so much more romantic, aren't they, than big wolves? So the GGs get the job every time in popular culture, incorrect though it may be. It's definitely family candidate discrimination, if you ask me. There are many other horses, of course, in Norse mythology. Some of them mentioned in the Sagas as a horse without, anything else being known about them. They're simply mentioned as horses that somebody or other was riding on at the time. Others are named, such as Hufra, able to travel in the air or across the water. Then there was Guntopper, Golden Mane, the horse of the bridge-guarding god Heimdall. Bloody Hoof, written by Freya, and able to go through darkness and fire, and that's quite a neat trick if you're a horse. In the Poetic Edda, in the tale of Sigurdur, the dragon slayer, Alvakar and Alsvidar, the early riser and the very fast, they are the horses that pull the goddess Sol's chariot across the sky every day, as their lovely golden manes shed daylight across the land. How lovely, isn't it? Anyway, now so they don't get a very bad dose of sunburn, which I suppose when you're sort of towing the sun around is always a bit of a risk. Each horse is fitted with bellows. Yes, bellows that pump lovely cool air over them. Mythology's only air-conditioned horses, at least as far as I'm aware. Skindafaxi and Hrimfaxi, the shining mane and the mane of frost, are another pair of not your normal old nags, or so we are told by Snorri Sturluson, one being the mount of the Norse personification of the nighttime, Note, who rides him during the night. It is rather obvious, I suppose. The horse drooling, drooling foam that becomes the early morning dew. Oh, yuck. I don't even like to think of it. And the other, the personification of the daytime, Daggett, who rides him, well, equally obviously during the day. The horse's mane lighting up the world. You see, I told you they weren't your old common or garden horses by a long way. Mind you, it does seem a bit unsanitary for the world to be drooled on. I mean, so if you're thinking of a roll in the grass, all lovely and shiny in the morning with that lovely looking dew, well, I'd think again. Remember, it's basically horse snot. But the three principal horses I'm talking about have nothing to do with the thrilling and romantic corpse-collecting warrior women flying skyward with dead men draped across their horses, boars, or wolves, nor dew-dripping, light-giving high flyers crawling across the sky with gods. No. Now, the first of the trio is Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse ridden by Odin, the All-Father, principal member of the Asil gods and the ruler of Orskaga. Then there's Grani, a horse actually related to Sleipnir and ridden by that great hero Sigurd in another. And then there's Helhest. Oh, yes, Helhest, the three-legged horse that belonged to Hel, the ruler of the realm of the dead, also known as Hel and later called Helheim. That's not really correct. Anyway, the first famous horse I'm talking about is Grani, the mount of the great hero Sigurd, or Sigurd as it's usually called. Now he was a mighty hero, very butch indeed. Like he killed dragons and all that sort of hero stuff. Oh yes. His deeds are recounted in the Volsunga Saga, and in chapter 13 of that epic tale we learn how he acquired his famous horse. Now, Sigurd was on his way to a wood where good horses were to be found, intending to choose a nice one for himself, when he encountered an old man with a long grey beard, one he'd never seen before. Now, in Norse stories, when you meet a bearded old man, you can be almost 100% sure it's going to turn out to be Odin, though nobody ever seems to recognize him. No, despite his rather obvious appearance with his floppy hat, and he's only got one eye. I mean, how many old men with floppy hats and one? Anyway, talk about thick. They're thick as two planks. Anyway, Sigurd asks the old man to come with him and assist him in choosing a good one. Why, I really don't know, but he thinks the one-eyed old man must be a horse expert, I suppose, for some reason. So the two go to the wood and they look at various horses, and the old man suggests that they drive them into a nearby river, the river Busseldorn. And Sigurd thinks that's a jolly good idea. Yes, so they go and they drive all the horses into the river because, you see, that will sort out the good ones from the bad ones. Which is a pretty naff idea. I mean, in real life, they'd be lucky not to be stampeded to death if the horses just bolted back the other way. But as this is a fairy story, anything can happen, and does. In reality, well, I mean, it just jumps right out the window. Now, all the horses, well, they roll off obligingly into the river and promptly swim back to land, unnerved by the deep flowing water. All but one, oh yes, all but one, a large, powerful, and particularly handsome grey horse. A grey horse, yes, one that no one has ever ridden, says the old man. Now, since they're presumably wild horses, I should think none of them have been ridden, but why spoil the story? Now, the old man tells Sigurd that this horse comes from Sleipnir's kin. Oh, yes, the great eight-legged horse ridden by Odin himself, and that he must be nourished heedfully, for it will be the best of all horses. Now, having said that, the old man vanishes. Poof! Hey, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Yes, you see, old men do that. Yes, they just vanish. Poof! Happens all the time. Now Sigurd names the horse Grani, and he goes off on great adventures. Well, of course he would. I mean, he's a hero. He goes off and does great things like dragon killing and all that sort of thing. Grani, being related to the great Sleipnir, is of course a rather better than average horse, even by mythological standards. But we'd have been a surefire winner in the Grand National. The Volsunga saga, of course, later became the Germanic Nibelungenlied. Sigurd, I should say, became Siegfried, and is probably best known to most people in that form as he appears in Richard Wagner's operas, Siegfried, in which he kills the dragon Fafnir, and Götterdämmerung, the Twilight of the Gods, in which he dies. And he's joined on the funeral pyre by Brunhilde, who rides into the flames mounted on Grani. Oh, how tragic. Oh, how romantic. Oh, how absolutely naff. How well trained Grani must have been to trot obligingly into a big funeral pyre. I'm going to try that on a real horse and see how far you get. Now we shall look at Sleipnir, the mighty, mighty steed of Olin himself, and his rather curious birth, to say the least of it. In the Hervor Saga og Heidreks, the saga of Hervor and Heidrik, Odin, disguised as he often was, and nobody, of course, recognizing him as usual, despite the one eye and the big hat and all that, he asks King Heidrik a riddle, and the scene goes like this. Who are the twain that on 10 feet run? 3 their eyes are, but only 1 tail. This riddle ponder, O Prince Heidrik. Now the king had a bit of a think, and quick as a wink, he says, thus it is when Odin rides upon Sleipnir. Oh, he got it, isn't he clever? I suppose the riddle wasn't really all that hard as riddles go. Well, perhaps the eye patch and the big hat thing gave the king a little bit of a clue, could have. So we have Sleipnir, the grey-coloured mount of Odin, described by the Allfather himself in the poem Grimnismal from the Poetic Edda as the best horse, when he lists all the best things that exist in the world. He is also, of course, the fastest of all horses, which is what he ought to be, seeing that he has twice the number of legs as all the other lot. He's stronger than any other horse. He can run on land, in the air. He can even run across water. Yes. And because of that, he is often used by Odin on his travels through the 9 worlds, even taking him down to hell to consult with the dead. Sleipnir was not just unusual in having an extra set of legs, nor his ability to fly or walk on water and all that sort of stuff, but also in his birth, which was, different, shall we say? Yes, to say the least. Some might even say bizarre. Anyway, in the early days of the gods, a builder very kindly offered to raise a fortified wall for them, a great fortification that would defend Asgard against the attacks of the giants, since though Thor could easily defeat any giant, of course, with his great hammer, Mjolnir, so powerful and heavy that none but he was able to lift it, and he could shrink it down to the size of a little amulet, just like that one, so it could be easily carried. All he had to do was shoot, and there you are, he had the mighty hammer, bang, and that was that. But he was frequently absent from Asgard, so leaving it unprotected, so they needed a bit of defense, hence the builder. Now, the builder would complete the task in 3 seasons, but there was a catch. There's always a catch, isn't there? He wanted the goddess Freya, among other things, in return for his work. Well, he really wanted Freya. She was a little more than a payment. She was kind of a fringe benefit, I suppose you might say. And that didn't really please the gods at all, especially Freya, of course. But after some deliberation, they agreed, with some prompting by Loki. Now, of course, that should have given them cause to consider the arrangement a little more carefully, but they didn't. I mean, anything that was supported by Loki should have been viewed with suspicion, shall we say. And were I Freya, I don't think I'd have been overly pleased with the idea that my fellow gods were willing even to consider using me as a closing payment for a wall. Charming, wasn't it? They did, however, set strict conditions. The builder must complete the work within a given time and have help from no man. He must be on his own. The builder agreed, and he asked if he could use his horse, a stallion named Svadilfari, to assist him. Well, that seemed a reasonable request. I mean, it was a horse, after all. It wasn't a man. So that met the agreed-upon conditions, and the gods consented. Oh, yeah, use the horse, carry on. However, the horse seemed to possess a super strength, much greater than any horse should, and with its help, well, the builder progressed at an amazing speed. He was flying along. The wall was just going up, bump, 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 like that. And it finally dawned on the gods that there was trickery involved. They weren't really very quick, were they? The horse in question was clearly not your average common or garden horse, and Loki's support for the builder, well, it raised suspicions. I mean, he did tend to be slightly questionable when it came to honesty, or to put it another way, you couldn't trust him as far as you could throw him. Though how much he actually knew about the builder and the horse is a bit questionable. Not that the other gods were exactly shining beacons of honesty themselves by a very, very long way, and they were already looking for a way out of trying to keep their end of the bargain anyway. Odin hadn't the slightest intention of keeping his side of the deal if there was any way he could possibly wiggle out of it, especially the part about handing over Freya. So it was made very clear to Loki that unless he did something to make the builder fail to complete the wall, since he had been very keen on the idea to begin with, something very unpleasant was going to happen to him. Like perhaps, well, maybe a very painful death or something rather inconvenient like that. Something that probably Freya would have been only too happy to give him. But never fear, gentle listeners. Loki rises to the occasion. And does he rise to it? Oh, yes, he most certainly does. As will be revealed in part 2. Until then, I shall say goodbye for now. Ta-ta.